Welcome to a Legendarium special about the life of Zenobia, the Empress of Palmyra. In the comments section, please let me know if you think Zenobia deserves to be remembered as a good or bad ruler. Zenobia came into the world in Palmyra, located in Roman Syria around the year 240 AD, when Rome remained relatively stable. Syria had been part of the Roman Empire for more than a century, and her family had been Roman citizens for generations. According to local lore, her family descended from the infamous Severan dynasty. Whether this is true or not, the Severan emperors granted Palmyra a Roman garrison and several imperial visits. Coming from an important family, she received an education in Greek and Latin, and also became fluent in Egyptian and Aramaic. According to local legend, her family placed her in charge of the family flocks as a young girl, and she grew accustomed to ruling over men. Other tales claim that she became an accomplished horse rider and could hunt as well as any man. At age 18, Zenobia married Lucius Septimius Odanthus, the Roman governor of Syria. The couple had at least one son named Vaballathus. The family ruled a prosperous region, Palmyra being a trade hub on the Silk Road. Merchants coming to or returning from Rome had to stop there to pay taxes. By then, Rome had plunged into the crisis of the 3rd century, when the Roman Empire faced an endless series of civil wars, barbarian invasions, and even climate change that led to famine and plague. Rebel commanders took to declaring themselves emperor of this or that part of the empire, since that made it easier for them to raise troops and supplies by sword point if need be. Only 2 years after her marriage, when Zenobia was 20 years old, Emperor Valerian marched against the Sassanid Empire, which lay on Rome's eastern border. Not only did he suffer humiliating defeat, but Emperor Shapur I forced Valerian to become a human footstool, making him bend over, then stepping on his back to mount his horse. After his death, Shapur I stuffed Valerian and put him on display in his court. Zenobia's husband, Odanthus, used the manpower and wealth of his province to avenge the Roman defeat. By 262, Odanthus even reached the walls of the Sassanid capital. By this time, Odanthus effectively ruled the Roman East, regardless of who ruled in Rome that particular year. Sadly, Odanthus's political career came to a sudden end when both he and his son from his first marriage, Herades, died during a hunting trip. With her son Vaballathus still a child, Zenobia became regent. She founded an imperial court and surrounded herself with scholars and philosophers, among them Cassius Longinus. To keep the peace, she tolerated religious minorities including Jews and Christians, whose numbers boomed during the endless wars and crises. With emperors coming and going in the west, sometimes on a yearly basis, Zenobia sent her armies into Roman Egypt and added it to her empire. As a fig leaf to whoever happened to be emperor that year, she claimed to invade Egypt not to take it for herself, but to defeat some Roman rebels there. Indeed, her Bedouin mercenaries baited the Roman rebels into following them, then surrounded and annihilated them. After taking Egypt, Zenobia entered talks with the governors of Asia, and they agreed to join her growing empire. The local governors saw Zenobia as a safer bet than the troubled and short-lived emperors in Rome. Her empire soon stretched from modern-day Iraq through Turkey and Egypt. In time, Zenobia minted coins displaying an image of Vaballathus on one side and the Roman emperor on the other. She also adopted imperial titles for herself and her son, whom she called the King of Kings, after an old Persian title. She also made trade agreements and carried out talks with the Sassanids. During normal times, doing such things without the emperor's permission would be considered treason. Once a strong emperor named Aelian finally re-emerged in the west, he treated it as such. Aelian clawed his way up through the ranks and proved himself skilled as both a soldier and a politician. After defeating the barbarians in the west, he did not bother to send peace envoys to Zenobia. During the year 272, he simply marched on the Palmyrene Empire with his entire army. Entering Asia Minor, he destroyed every town and city loyal to Zenobia. In time, he reached Tyana, home of a famous philosopher fittingly named Apollonius of Tyana, whom Aelian admired. Supposedly, Apollonius came to Aelian in a dream and asked him to be merciful, so Emperor Aelian spared the city and marched on. Once they realized they would be spared if they surrendered, other cities and provinces simply opened their gates to Aelian, leaving Zenobia dangerously alone. Nonetheless, Zenobia met Aelian at the head of her army outside the city of Daphne. Aelian won by using Zenobia's own tactics against her. He faked retreat, and then swung around in a pincer movement after the Palmyrene soldiers exhausted themselves by chasing the Roman Emperor's army. Zenobia then fled to the city of Emessa, where she kept her treasury. After another failed battle outside Emessa, Zenobia fled to Palmyra, which she readied for a siege. She hoped for reinforcements from the Sassanid Empire. When they failed to arrive, she fled with her son on the back of a camel. After Aelian entered Palmyra and found that Zenobia escaped again, he sent his cavalry to run her down, which they did as she tried to cross the Euphrates River. The legionaries returned Zenobia to Aelian in chains. She howled her innocence, blaming any trouble on evil advisors, especially Cassius Longinus. Aelian obligingly executed Cassius, then returned Zenobia to Rome. It is not known for certain what happened next. One account says that she and her son drowned while crossing the Bosporus. Another claims that an old enemy of hers murdered her before the Romans could get around to it. Yet another claims that Aelian paraded Zenobia through the streets of Rome wearing golden chains laden with jewelry. Afterwards, Aelian released her and allowed her to live out her days as a Roman matron. Whatever her fate, she became one of the most famous women of the ancient world. Her legacy as a clever warrior queen influenced painters, writers, and even monarchs like Catherine the Great of Russia. That wraps things up for this episode of The Legendarium. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, press like. If you want to see more, press subscribe. And if you've got anything to say, let me know in the comments section. Thanks again for joining me, and I hope that you have a great rest of the day.